When it comes to documenting the library of an old game console, there's a lot of things that you'll encounter where they just don't matter. Sports, traditional board games, educational games. These are things that might have been purchased on release, and then once that era has passed, nobody really thinks about again. What I'm saying here is, get ready for the most in-depth discussion of Michael English Daibouken that will ever be made. But first, you have to know what's Michael. Not who's Michael, what's Michael. And that is weirdly complicated. What's Michael was a series of irregularly produced, effectively unrelated comics. The sole linking factor between any of them was that the cat was named Michael. With every story, the format changed, the style changed, the setting changed, the genre changed, though it was typically a comedy. The name Michael was the sole constant. Depending on the story, Michael might have been a normal cat that was just around, an anthropomorphic cat in a world of funny animals, a Garfield-like figure who humans treated like a normal animal, but behaved more like a human, and anything else that was convenient. Michael crossed into other media multiple times, and this game came out very close to his second live-action television special. I think the plot of the game is loosely based on the plot of the first television special, and that's mainly because the first special has a lengthy E.T. parody. The plot of Michael English Daibouken is given, appropriately enough, in English if you wait on the title screen. However, it flashes by so fast you won't have a chance to read it even if you do speak English. So here's the plot of the game as presented. In the year 2000X, Michael the cat happened to be expelled from his original planet, Daibouken, because of his poor grades of hensashi. Michael was thrown out of planet Daibouken, and after wandering a couple of days in outer space, he finally reached the space island like the planet Earth. Michael was extremely impressed by the advanced academic level in this space island. From the day Michael was impressed, he made up his mind trying study all over from the beginning. He was always hoping to go back to his mother's star of Daibouken. Only way for him to go back was to get good grades in the space island. Now let's start from ABC. Just so you know, none of that story matters until the ending, which is a single screen. As the name implies, Michael English Daibouken is an educational game intended to teach young children English. After you create your save file, you're presented with a map of lessons, and if you score great on all of them, then you get the opportunity to view the ending. Scoring a great on them is not easy, but not because the English is difficult. Well, maybe it'd be difficult if you're a 6-year-old in Japan. The real problem is that the game portion of this educational game is really rough. The developer and publisher of it is Scorpionsoft, and if you're not familiar with them, don't worry, no one else is. They only published one other thing on the Famicom Disk System, and that was all of their output. I can't find any other record of them anywhere. There were a lot of these fly-by-night, small developer publishers that spun off of some big company in 1986 and 1987, but in this case, there's no obvious ties to anyone else. The game doesn't even have credits that could be useful for tracking people down. There are 6 categories of lessons, and most of them have 3 worlds, and the structure of the lesson in each world is a little bit different. The exception to this is the only one that ties into the game's plot, space. It exists solely in World 1. You can also hit A and B to change the difficulty level, and this affects the flow of the action, basically speeding things up a little bit. In all of the lessons, your goal is to spell an English word. How this is presented to you depends on the world, but you're still going to be doing the same basic actions. A makes Michael jump, B will shoot a little ball of something, and letters are flying up from the bottom of the screen. They'll bounce up and down until they reach the top of the screen and then start over at the bottom. Only 4 letters appear at a time, and only one of those is correct. Depending on the world, you might have the entire word spelled out for you, you might only have a picture to guide you, or you might have the word in Japanese. When you collect a letter, whether it's right or wrong, all of the rest of the letters vanish immediately, and the next set of letters appear a few moments later. And this means if you collect them at the bottom of the screen, then it's likely that another letter will appear right on top of you. There's multiple tiers that Michael can jump on, but it's not always clear where he can jump. Holding down up and pressing A will do a higher jump. Holding down and pressing A might drop through the level that he's on, assuming there is one. But the visual design doesn't really help you know where you're going to land. Generally speaking, touching the teacher's head on the left-hand side will make the English words show up for a moment, and touching the cat head on the right-hand side will make the Japanese word appear for a moment. All the Japanese text in the game is written in katakana, a character set that's mainly used for loanwords in the Japanese language. It's a bit more angular and simplified, which is why it's used a lot in early games, but even Japanese people can find it difficult to read when presented like this. When you collect an incorrect letter, a cat head might pop out the side to come in and attack you. You also lose a bit of your life bar. This is where Michael can shoot the target and knock it out. In World 3, you have a limited amount of time to get the next letter, and if you ever collect a wrong letter or run out of time, then the whole word is revealed and you just go on to the next one. In Worlds 1 and 2, for the school, town, house, and farm categories, after you complete 3 letter collecting stages, then you go to a shoot-'em-up screen where you're given a word and have to collect the picture that matches that. You can shoot down the incorrect word, which is why Michael hates America so much. The pictures appear in waves, and there's always 3 different waves that occur for each word. Only one of the waves will be correct, of course. Collecting an incorrect icon will hurt Michael. Health recovery in the game is handled by collecting the fish that will appear at the bottom of the screen from time to time. If you make it through all of the lessons for that world, then you're given a score, and this seems to be based on a percentage of words where you collected at least 1 incorrect letter. As I mentioned, a lot of the time that is out of your control, so you'll need to repeat the lessons a lot if you want to see the ending. It takes a long time to play out the lessons too. Maybe 2 minutes for every standard stage, which you'll have to do 6 times, and then 3 or 4 minutes for every shooter stage, which you'll have to do twice. So each of those squares is actually about 10 minutes per attempt. I know this will come as a surprise to you, but nobody in Japan remembers Michael English Daibouken. It is a game that is effectively wiped out of existence. There's 2 aspects that have to be considered here for a final judgment. First, how does Michael English Daibouken play as a game? And the answer there is poorly. The action is a mess, it's not very interesting, and you'll run into a lot of complications from the poor design. But how is it for teaching people English? Now that's a little bit harder for me to judge, but I don't think it's horrible as an English vocabulary drill. It is a little bit limited there. In fact, there's some misspellings in the game. That is supposed to be fork, not folk. But for putting kids in front of vocabulary words and making them spell them, it does a decent enough job. As an educational tool, this is okay-ish. It's only doing drills, but at least it's proper vocabulary drills. Not just words and letters being thrown at kids. Nobody was going to learn English from Michael English Daibouken, but maybe it helped some kids at least a little bit?